When Nature Isn't a Gift, a Biologist's Take on the Serviceberry by Andrew A. Davinack, from the online columns at skepticalinquirer.org. When I was invited to join a discussion panel about Robin Wall Kimmerer's essay, The Serviceberry, An Economy of Abundance, with an audience of first-year biology students, I expected an engaging conversation about ecology and ethics. Kimmerer's writing is luminous, part memoir, part manifesto, inviting readers to imagine an alternative to the extractive logic of modern capitalism. Yet as a parasitologist who studies relationships defined by asymmetry, I found myself wrestling with her central metaphor. Natural systems can surely be understood as analogues to economic systems. It is a beautiful idea, but a misleading one. Kimmerer proposes that the natural world operates as a gift economy, sustained by reciprocity rather than competition. The serviceberry, she writes, offers its fruit freely to birds, bears, and humans alike, demonstrating a kind of ecological generosity that could serve as a moral model for human exchange. The image is elegant, even redemptive, but when it comes to authentic science communication, it risks blurring the line between poetry and process, between how nature feels and how it works. Natural systems don't trade, they transform. Energy flows, nutrients cycle, populations fluctuate, but there is no currency, no agency assigning value. When we describe ecological interactions in economic terms, markets, debts, investments, we import a human moral framework onto systems that are causal, not moral. In my own work on parasitic worms that infect oysters, there are no acts of generosity. The worm bores into its host shell to create a safe refuge. The oyster in turn walls off the invader, forming mud-filled blisters that scar its nacre. This exchange is neither gift nor transaction. It is a feedback loop shaped by constraint. The parasite must not kill its host too quickly. The host must not waste energy on futile defense. Over evolutionary time, both adapt toward a tenuous equilibrium. From this perspective, reciprocity is not about fairness or intention, but about persistence. Systems survive not because they are moral, but because they are self-regulating. In one passage, Kimmerer writes that natural selection favors those who can avoid competition, that scarcity is just a cultural construct, and that competition makes sense only when we consider the unit of evolution to be the individual. These are elegant sentiments, but they risk turning metaphor into mechanism. In ecology, competition does not reduce carrying capacity for all concerned. It defines it. Niche differentiation arises precisely because competition imposes a cost, not because evolution prefers harmony. Diversity is not a moral strategy, it is a mathematical one. Likewise, scarcity isn't a fiction, it is the engine of selection. Every adaptation is a response to constraint. Without scarcity, there would be no specialization, no diversity, and no evolution at all. The essay also invokes group selection to argue that cooperation, not competition, is the dominant evolutionary force. That claim remains controversial. Most evolutionary biologists recognize that cooperation itself evolves through self-interest, kin selection, mutual benefit, or reciprocal exchange, not moral generosity. Evolution does not reward kindness, it rewards persistence. The danger is that students and laypersons encountering these ideas for the first time may mistake a metaphor for consensus. Kimmerer's version of evolution is not wrong because it is hopeful. Rather, it is wrong because it confuses ethics with mechanism. Still, it is easy to see why the gift economy metaphor resonates. It counters centuries of reductionist thinking that cast nature as a machine and evolution as an endless war of all against all. Kimmerer's essay attempts to restore relationship and reverence, to remind us that we are participants, not owners in the biosphere. For many students encountering biology for the first time, that is a valuable emotional corrective. But good metaphors have limits. When we stretch them too far, they can obscure mechanism. Calling nature an economy of abundance suggests that cooperation is the rule and conflict the aberration. Yet ecosystems tell a more complicated story. Mutualisms, commensalisms, and parasitisms form a continuum of interdependence, each vital to ecosystem function. Predation and competition can increase diversity. Parasites can regulate host populations and prevent dominance. Balance arises not from benevolence but from tension. If we frame nature as inherently generous, What do we make of influenza, malaria, or parasitic wasps whose offspring consume other unsuspecting insects from the inside out? Are these failures of reciprocity or expressions of the same adaptive logic that produces the sweetness of serviceberries? To understand ecology is to confront discomfort. Suffering, exploitation, and death are built into the engine of life. Parasites, in particular, embody this truth. They are not villains but participants in energy flow, mediating relationships between species, and often maintaining the very diversity that sustains ecosystems. When I show my students surgery videos of writhing roundworms being physically removed from a patient's stomach, they sometimes recoil, until they learn that what they are seeing tells a story of coevolution, not corruption. The parasite is not taking more than nature allows. It's operating within boundaries enforced by feedback. Seen that way, even parasitism becomes a study in equilibrium. That is where I find a bridge to Kimmerer's vision. She is right that interdependence defines the living world, but wrong, I think, to describe it as an economy of generosity. The better lesson is that life persists through constraint, feedback, and consequence. Every act, whether predation or pollination, feeds into a system that ultimately enforces balance. Perhaps the true gift of nature is that it does not conform to our values at all. It operates through a brutal elegance, cycles of growth, decay, and adaptation that make moral neutrality look like wisdom. If humans wish to learn from that, the lesson isn't generosity, but humility. Acting within limits, recognizing that stability often depends on what we cannot control or redeem. Kimmerer's essay asks us to imagine an economy rooted in care. That is a worthy goal. But the ecosystems I study remind us that care in nature is not kindness, it is feedback. The world does not give, it balances. And that to me is abundance enough. Thank you for listening to Skeptical Inquirer Audio Edition. This podcast is produced by the Center for Inquiry at our headquarters in Amherst, New York. If you would like to support our work, please consider subscribing to Skeptical Inquirer magazine at skepticalinquirer.org. It is listeners like you that make our work possible. With your support, we can continue to promote science, reason, and secular values throughout the world. Thank you.